so excited to be with you guys this morning. Today, as we're wrapping up our series, we've been talking about what it means to break trail, and really, if you've ever there's people who break the trail, or another term that we often use is a trailblazer, somebody who pioneers and paves a path. Is what that person is, and that's what we've been talking about throughout this whole series. We talked about how Jesus came and how he did that for us. And we talked about that for the first couple weeks, but then these last 2 weeks we've talked about how after Jesus died, after he resurrected, that literally changed everything. Everything in human history changed in that moment. In fact, there's not a single credible historian that won't say that is the most pivotal moment in all of human history. Is when Jesus came, died, resurrected, rose again, and ascended into heaven. Like all of human history, looks either forward to or back from those moments, which is really crazy how influential that changed everything. But as we're thinking about this, as we're talking about this, last week I'd mentioned a guy who was a trailblazer in the sense of he was the very first blind person to hike the Appalachian Trail. That from top to bottom, I can't remember which way he went, but he hiked the entire Appalachian Trail completely blind, and what a trailblazer he was, and what that did, and how he had pioneered. And we talked about how God has really gifted some people who are now very famous adventurers, and he was one of them that we had mentioned. But today I want to think about the other types of adventurers that we see, and that is like reality TV show adventures. You guys know what I'm talking about? Does anybody like reality TV show adventures, like The Amazing Race? Anybody here watch The Amazing Race or Survivor? Did anybody watch Survivor? Yeah. Are there other ones that you guys can think of? Maybe throw them out. Anybody have any other big favorite adventure stuff? What about Bear Grylls? Does anybody like watching Bear Grylls stuff? Bear Grylls is my dude. Like I would love to hang out with him for a week, and I'd let him be in charge of our plans. I trust him that much. But I don't know if you know this, but Bear Grylls is a really, really strong Christian. He actually goes and he does prison ministry. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that before, but he goes and speaks in prisons and shares his testimony, shares what God's done in his life and stuff like that. He once was jumping out of an airplane and his parachute didn't open, and he smacked on the ground full speed, broke all of them, all of his bones, all 206 or whatever you have as an adult, shattered. I don't know how many actually broke, but pretty amazing guy, but loves Jesus and loves lives of adventure. But he actually developed a new show, him and then Mark, or whoever the guy is who produced Survivor. Both of them are really, really strong Christians, the Survivor producer and Bear Grylls. So they produced this new show together on Amazon, and it's like The Amazing Race, but dialed up to 20. All right, and it's called it's Amazon's The World's Toughest Race, and it's in the mountains of Fiji and stuff. And I just want to show you a quick glimpse of what this show looks like.
This is the closest we ever get to being superheroes.
671 kilometers. Mountains, jungles, rivers, ocean, pedal throw, and swamp.
Oh my God.
And it is
so hard.
brutal.
4 hours of sleep in 4 days.
I don't mind. I think I might die.
All right. So anyway, this is a show that's kind of like The Amazing Race, but absolutely crazy. These people, they're swimming in absolutely freezing water. They're climbing steep, slippery mountains that are just soaked. They're sleeping outside through intense storms. They're having run-ins with wild animals, and I'm assuming that includes snakes, which is where I'm out, when it comes to snakes. And all of this they're doing with very little rest and very little food. I can imagine, most of that stuff, I would really, really enjoy doing. I love adventure. In fact, the way that I choose, my best friends, my closest friends, is the Amazing Race test. And that is, could I see myself Like, is this somebody I could recruit to be on my team if got an opportunity to be on the Amazing Race? You guys know what I'm talking about? Like, is this somebody I can see going on an adventure with, like across the world? I'm like, we could win it. Like that's how. If you want my inner circle, that's what it takes. Is like, yeah, okay. But here they are, like they're crossing all this stuff. You see how intense it is. There's that moment where they're like spanning that gap over that ravine, over like that rocky river, and they're like going across the rope. Like I feel like I could do that, but if you got to the other side, and there's like a snake there. I'm like, nope, going back. You know, like that. That's probably the scariest stuff for me. Is not the stuff that you could see. It's the stuff that you don't see until it's like too late. Which is kind of like life. But all that to say, here in the show, you see these guys, and what happens, the way that it works is they have their teams. They have their teams on this adventure race, and part of the process in that is that you have a trail breaker each day for that team. All right, and so what that means is you send somebody ahead to scout out the trail and know what challenges are ahead, what things you're going to face. Is this the right way or is this the wrong way? Does this get us closer to our goal? Does it get us farther away? Because there's a big, huge prize at the end of it, right? And so you send somebody ahead to scout it out, to pave that path. And so before you take all of your gear and like, oh, we just carried like 200 pounds worth of stuff in the wrong direction, you send somebody to carve out and mark that trail for you. All right. And in those cases, that's where you really have to rely on your team. That's where you have to really rely on other people that you trust in to help pave and mark that trail. But then some days it's your day. It's your day to be that trailblazer. It's your day to be that person marking out that path for others to follow. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So over these last couple of weeks, we've been talking about how Jesus, first off, he never gives up on us. You know, that Jesus' disciples, they were imperfect people just like all of us, but Jesus never once gave up on them. Jesus understands our pain. He literally purposely, like God's great plan was to come down and endure the same type of life as we do, even harder actually, so that when we're suffering, when we're going through pain, he completely understands and completely relates. And then Jesus, he shows us love. He shows us grace. I mean, that's really what the whole cross is about. But Jesus doesn't leave us there with the ending at the cross, because he comes back. He's alive. It's saying that he conquered death. And because of that, we know he can be trusted. That literally there is nothing outside of the scope of his power and control and his hands. And so that's what we've been talking about so far. But today we're going to be talking about the team that Jesus puts around you as he sends you out on a life on mission. You see, I had two guys when I was in high school, specifically on my football team with me, because my football team was kind of like a war zone spiritually. I don't know if any of you guys have been on any sort of team. As you're like living out your faith, there's people on your team who are completely in agreement with you, who are strong supports for you, and there's people on your team who are probably like antagonists when it comes to your faith, right? And so for me, I had probably like 70 antagonists on my team, and a handful of people who encouraged and supported me along that journey. So here's Jacob Barker and Ryan Junod. All right, I don't know if I should give them their last names. Like, no, somebody's gonna steal their credit or something online from our recording. But anyway, so here's these two guys, Jacob and Ryan. These are buddies of mine from high school. I can't guarantee that picture's from high school. That might have been like last week. It was on Jacob's Facebook. But they're all adults now. They're my age, but well, kind of adults. But anyway, so here's these two guys. They're goofy as all get out. They're fun-loving guys. They were awesome to hang out with. But they were fun. They were great to hang out with. But they deeply, deeply loved Jesus and were sold out and committed to following him. Didn't mean they were perfect. They made mistakes. They said stupid things. I made mistakes. I dated Ryan's ex-girlfriend. Like it's where we were imperfect people. All right, and on all that stuff. But these were some of the guys that God put around me to be my team, to help raise me up and grow me in my faith. When I had nobody else to blaze that trail for me, these guys, they came and they marked the path. But not only did they mark the path and show me how to live for Jesus, they literally like linked arms with me and said, "Come follow him. Come follow us as we follow him." And that's what this looks like. That's what we're talking about today. And so Jesus' disciples, they had that kind of built in. It was a part of the system that Jesus created from the very beginning, was for us to be in relationship with one another, doing life together as we walk out this journey. And so we find ourselves in John chapter 21. John 21, it says that several guys, it says Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel from Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, so James and John, and then two other disciples were all together. How much would you hate to be the ones listed as two other disciples? It lists all these other ones by name. It's like, oh, and two of the other disciples. Like, what? Like, how did I not get credit here? Like, that's almost as many words just to say my name as two other disciples. Like Jeremy and Frank, like they were there. Like, no, the same number of words. I don't know about in the Greek, but anyway, and two other disciples. And Peter says, you know what? I'm going out to fish. And he says, and the rest of them were like, dude, let's go with you. Like, that sounds awesome. So they got out, they went out, got into a boat, but that night they caught nothing. All right, that night they caught nothing. And so here, what's happening is Jesus already came back. Jesus has already revealed that he's back to them. But now they're in this season where what his next step was that he gave them was to sit and wait. To sit and wait for further instructions. How many of you guys hate to wait? Anybody hate to wait? Like, I don't know if you've ever waited in line for a really long ride or any of that stuff, but their instructions were to sit and wait. And they're getting impatient while they're waiting. They don't know what the next steps are, and they're starting to wonder. Man, when we were traveling around with Jesus daily, people were funding us, people were helping cover our needs. But now we're just the guys who followed Jesus. Like we're not the guys walking with him. So who's going to provide for us now? We're just some dudes. Is how they're seeing him. And so they're worried, they're concerned how they're going to be provided for. So what do? They run back to what's comfortable. Because I don't know about the rest of the guys, but Peter and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, their career before they met Jesus was they were fishermen. That's exactly what they did. And so they run back to what's comfortable, because that's what we do when our lives get shook a little bit, when something changes, when life gets difficult. What we most often do is we run to what's comfortable. And that doesn't mean it's always something bad. There's things that we run to that's comfortable, that's maybe some sort of sin or some sort of thing that's self-destructive. But there's also neutral things that we run to, things that aren't positive or negative. It's just neutral. And there's other positive things that we run to, things that encourage us, things that strengthen us. But the truth of the matter is anything that we run to, if we run to it for too long, it can become a habit, and it can become an idol. I know for me, one of my areas that I find comfort when I'm stressed and just totally just tapped out and overloaded is TV. Anybody else like that? That's your sort, that's what you do? Just a couple of us. I could binge something crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I watched the entirety of a show while Danny was gone this week. I mean, that was like my kids went to bed and I seriously watched 4 hours of the same things. Should I watch a movie? No, I don't have time for a movie. Let's watch 4 hours of this TV show. But anyway, but that's the thing that I revert to sometimes. And the thing is the reason why is because it's a time when it's a time I don't have to think. It's a time that there's no pressure. It's a time that it's an opportunity to do something that's as comfortable and something that I've known for years. And that's what that is for me. But like we said, there's nothing wrong with taking some time for ourselves. But when we're on a mission, we can't live in our comfort zones forever. All right, there has to become a moment that we turn that off and we refocus on the mission. We refocus on the calling, and we don't let those things of comfort, become a distraction from God's plan for us. All right, and so that's what we find. That's what we find here is for Peter and the rest of the guys, God has a mission for them. God has a plan for these guys, and that's what he's about ready to call them to. All right, and so what happens next is these guys, they're out on the water. They don't catch anything all night. Excuse me. And so they don't catch anything all night. But then they're rolling into shore the next morning, and all of a sudden there's some guy on the shoreline who yells out to them, like, "Hey, just drop the nets one more time." Okay. They're dog tired. They throw them over. They're just expecting to just pull them back in like they normally do. And this time it's heavier. This time it's really heavy. And they're dragging it. And they finally pull all this in, and they literally have a boatload of fish. All right, maybe that's where the term came from. I don't know. But they have a boatload of fish. And so what happens next? Like any sensible person, all right, they realize that this is Jesus here. Because this is the exact same way that Jesus introduced himself to Peter the very, very first time. And so Peter immediately recognizes it, and he has a Forrest Gump moment, all right? He has a Forrest Gump moment. What I mean by that is he literally jumps off the boat and swims his way in. He's like, Peter's on the boat, and he's like, Lieutenant Dan, is that you? And he like dives in, like Lieutenant Jesus, is that you? And he's going like the rest of the disciples, they're like rowing in, like jerk, like not helping us drag all these fish in here. And I'm pretty sure that's where the moment in Forrest Gump comes from. It's inspired by this moment right here, I'm sure. And so he goes swimming in. The rest of the guys drag all these fish in, all right? And then what does Jesus do? He has a fire right there for them with some more fish, and he starts grilling them breakfast. He starts like making fish for breakfast, which is weird breakfast, but I don't know what they ate for breakfast back then. Probably fish, apparently. But so they're eating this fish, and then all of a sudden Jesus pulls Peter aside. All right, he pulls Peter aside. He's like, hey, Peter. He's like, let me ask you something. He's like, and he calls him by his name that he had before he started following Jesus, before Jesus gave him a new identity. He says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And a lot of people debate about what he's talking about here. I would like to assume that he's pointing to this little boatload of fish that these guys are going to be pretty set with the amount of money they can make off it. But he's like, do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than the rest of this stuff, this world of opportunity with all this? Do you love me more than that? And then he looks at him, he says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He says, well, then Jesus says, then feed my lambs. All right, some time passes. He's like, wait a second. He says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He's like, that's ridiculous. I just answered that question. Like, what are you getting at here? Like, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He says, well, then take care of my sheep. And it says, he asked him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He says, at this moment, his heart just breaks because what does Simon remember? Simon, Peter, what does he remember? He remembers just several days before denying Jesus three times in front of various different people. And he feels like he's being reminded of that. But Jesus isn't doing this to remind him. He's not doing this to like twist the knife now. What he's doing is he's reminding him so that he can restore him, so that he can get him pivoted back to being on mission. Now, I'm sure after he goofed up, after he made this big mistake several days before where he denied Jesus 3 times, he probably started to wonder, am I still called? Does God still have a plan for me? He knows who I am. He told me that's what I was going to do. I went and did it. Now I'm out. Like all these years doing this, I might as well just revert back to fishing because that's apparently what I'm good at, even though he wasn't that great at it because Jesus had to bail him out twice with giving him free fish. But anyway, so he's like, I'm just going to go back to that because it's comfortable and it's familiar and it's all I know. You see, but Jesus doesn't leave him there. He looks at him, he says, do you love me? He says, Lord, you know all things, both the good and bad things about me, and you know that I love you. And then Jesus once more says, feed my sheep. All right, and so this isn't a story about Jesus saying, hey, what are you doing being a fisherman? You're definitely meant to be a shepherd. Like, no, he's not talking about feeding real sheep. He's talking about feeding people. That the mission that Jesus is calling Peter to is to go out and change the world. All right, to go out and raise other people up in their faith in Jesus, to take those who believe in him and help them grow in him even more, and to help those that don't know him yet to find him and get on the path to him. See, Jesus wanted Peter to accept a brand new mission. This mission was going to look different than it had for the last 3 years. That on this new mission, that he wasn't going to have Jesus literally walking there beside. It wasn't going to be watching Jesus do everything and just like clapping while he did it. Now he was going to be called to go out and do it himself. And this was going to change a lot of things. See, but Jesus didn't give just Peter this mission. This is a mission he ended up giving all of us. You see, more time goes by, and Jesus tells his disciples, he says, go to this mountain and wait for me, and I'm going to come do something big. All right, so they're out there, they're on this mountain, they're praying, they're worshiping, but some of the disciples are doubting. But then all of a sudden, Jesus walks up. He's like, hey, what's up, guys? Just acting like it's a casual day like any other. But what they don't know is this is the moment that Jesus is about ready to ascend into heaven and leave it to them to do this mission. But right before this, Jesus gives them his final words. Now, you can imagine if Jesus did all these years of ministry, he chose 33 years to live among us, these last words are going to be extremely important. They're going to like sum up everything, like what Jesus really, really cares about, like what's the most important thing on his heart. It's probably going to be his last words. And this is what he says. He says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. So he's saying, go out and reach the lost. Go out and build up the believers that are already following, build them up, equip them, make them stronger in their faith, and then go reach more people. But he's not like, hey, but just try to be really good at it, do your best. No, he says this, he says, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. He's saying, I'm sending you this thing, I'm sending you out. It's gonna be freaky because I'm not gonna be like physically walking with you now, but I am going to be with you. You might not see me, but I guarantee you are not doing it on your own. I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to give you the strength and the ability to do this. See, and that's why it's important that we know that Jesus gives us a mission too. That these things are very, very importantly written down or purposely written down because Jesus wanted us to read these so that we would know that this is a mission for us too. Going back to Jacob and Ryan from back when I was in high school, these two guys, they were just trying to authentically love and follow Jesus to the best of their ability. They were still imperfect dudes. I'm sure Walmart doesn't love that they're doing that to their cards. Like I'm pretty sure like some people hate them. But these were great guys who loved Jesus and who were doing their best to follow him. And while they were doing that, when I was a brand new believer, when I was in the very, very like formation of my faith and I was finally trying to get my roots established, these were the guys that linked arms with me that didn't just say, hey, watch what we do. But they linked arms with me and said, hey, come follow us as we follow him. Let us help you in this. And these guys literally helped disciple me and raise me up in the Lord. Like these guys literally changed my life. That everything good in my life now is as a result of the great people that God put in my life then. Every single good thing I have, whether it's getting to serve here at Cornerstone, it's my wife, it's my family, it's the transformed life and knowing and following Christ, all comes as a result of those who built into me back then. And that's exactly who God's calling you to be. All right, that's exactly who God's calling you to be, is this an authentic follower and believer who loves Jesus and who loves people and who brings those two things together. That's what he's calling you to do. See, Jesus has given you a mission too. A mission to follow Jesus on the trails that he's already broken for us. All right? And a mission to break trails for others on their path to meeting Jesus too. And that's his calling that he's given you. And so my encouragement is, this might be crazy to think about, but the big question that I always have is what would it take to reach the world? I had a pastor when I was growing up in student ministry who looked at me because I was always living life on mission. He's like, Joel, like chill, like you don't have to save everybody. And he was right, because God's not depending on just me. Because the truth of the matter is, like what it would take to reach the whole entire world is if every single Jesus follower just led 3 people to Christ. I'm not asking you to be the next Billy Graham and lead 28 million people to Christ or whatever his stat is. I'm just asking you to find 3. 3 people who don't know Jesus yet and say, I'm going to passionately love Jesus and model him for them and do my best to love them and connect them to the Savior. If you do that, you will change the world. And certainly like these 2 guys did in my life, you'll definitely change some lives along the way. And that's my prayer for each and every single one of us, is that we will live that life on mission. So I'm going to invite the band up. The band's going to come up and play. And we're going to sing the song called The Commission. And what this song is about is written by the band Guinen. And it's really Jesus' words as he's sending out the disciples. It's a song that's about if Jesus was to communicate what he's feeling there to us through music, this is exactly what it would have sounded like. And so as they play the song, I really want you to think about and pray about while we're sitting in our seats, who are your 3? Who are the 3 people that God's put on your heart that he's saying, I want you to start living a life on mission for them now. I want you to say the words you need to say. I want you to love them the way they need to be loved. And I want you to not just love them, but really speak my name to them. To not just like love them quietly and be like, well, hopefully they'll just see my love and believe in Jesus. Like, no, but to really say, you need Jesus and here's the way to him. So as we sing this song, take some time to pray, reflect, and pray for those people specifically.